A Tale of Two Cockies. A tale of love, compassion, friendship, and loyalty. It played off in our backyard and I posted it as it unfolded on my website as a diary or a blog. That was in the days before social media. I passed the link on to a few friends via email. They in turn passed it on. The diary peaked at 42,000 visitors on a single day. I received hundreds of emails per day. Parrot societies asked me for permission to print the story in the magazines. The website was translated into Dutch, German, Italian, Hebrew, and Korean. And those are only the ones I know about. From the USA, I got a request from the Texas Department of Education to use it as a reader for primary school kids. So why did these events make such a deep impression on us? It showed that these creatures were not only highly intelligent, but that they also experienced higher levels of emotion, which we considered as only human attributes. We are not alone. We need to humbly acknowledge that. It started when a wild Australian sulfur-crested cockatoo flew into a car and broke its wing. The driver took it to the vet who had to amputate the wing. The vet approached us. We adopted her, for which we needed a National Parks and Wildlife permit. We kept her in a cage outside where she was often visited by wild cockatoos. One of the things that impressed us most was how she would push leaves through the bars of the cage, offering food to visitors. She had many visitors over the years. About 6 years later, she again had a visitor. I noticed this while gardening and got my camera. As usual, he spent a lot of time sitting on the cage with a tamper-proof latch. There was a lot of talking and grooming. A bloke had to look presentable when courting a bird. Things got interesting when he approached the front door. The clever little fellow figured out how to undo the tamper-proof latch. He opened the door for a lot of mutual grooming and food sharing. Ooh, that's nice. Scratch a bit more on that side, dear. He was not shy to get into the cage and would go in and out a number of times. They mated. We looked forward to beautiful baby cockatoos. Later on, the whole extended family came visiting, but the special mate was back every day. We left the door open during the day, but if we forgot to open it, it didn't matter. Cockatoos have intelligence that rivals primates. Because she had only one wing, she stayed inside or just sat on top. At first it seemed as though he was annoyed because she did not fly off with him, and he would squawk a lot, protesting. He soon came to understand that she could not fly, so he just stayed. However, she was no longer returning to her cage. The two of them stayed in the trees in our garden. The yard was well fenced off, so they were safe from dogs, but the neighbor's cat was not kept indoors at night, and we often had to chase it away. Chances are a cat would come off second best in an altercation with a cockatoo. But at night, cats remain a danger because they could stalk a sleeping bird on the ground. Cockatoos make their nests in hollow logs, but we noticed the male hard at work digging a hole under the clump of lily-pilly trees. We put down a hollow log for them, but they just ignored it. The nest he dug was a hole with a short tunnel leading off to the side where she laid her eggs. Once there were eggs in the nest, the male became extremely aggressive. You better not get near the nest, or he would take chunks of flesh from your foot. It was difficult to take these pictures because I literally had to steal them while running away from the male. We kept a vigil to see how things were progressing. They took turns incubating the eggs and covering the tunnel. After about 3 weeks, the eggs hatched. Have a careful look at this picture and try to spot the bit of yellow fluff. Whenever Mum and Dad Cockatoo left the nest, we tried to get a look, but you had to do it while running because Dad Cockatoo chased you. Well, I hoped his mother thought he was pretty. Eventually we did too, but initially both of them just looked like pink balls with a bit of yellow fluff. They were growing fast, and when Dad allowed me, I tried to get some more pictures to share with you. Mother fed them diligently and their bellies were round. She kept them warm at night, and Dad made sure no other creature got near them, especially because they were on the ground in a hole. The pink slowly made way for the yellow fluff, and the yellow fluff gradually turned into white feathers. The male was as proud and protective as can be. When I dared to get near the nest, he would attack my feet, the lawnmower, the wheelbarrow, or anything that moved. He regularly fended off other wild cockatoos, even those who looked friendly visitors. These birds were partly attracted by food we put out for our family. You can easily see when a cockatoo is agitated. They lift the yellow feathers on their heads and squawk very loudly. Dad had his moments. If you approached him carefully and slowly, he would allow you to touch him and give him a rub for minutes on end. Mother was far less aggressive, but she would never allow me to touch her. That got us thinking that perhaps Dad was a captive bird at some earlier part of his life, and that he was set free or escaped. But then again, some of the other wild birds also got quite used to us, especially the rainbow lorikeets. Well, that's tough love. You could cuddle him, but he would also draw blood biting your hand or foot. That sounds a bit like most human affairs, doesn't it? Southeast Queensland had its worst drought in more than 10 years. Some say it was the driest in 100 years. We had severe water restrictions. We were happy to get a bit of rain on the weekend. I had a look at how the cockies were coping with the mild rain. Dad did the only thing he knew how. He dug more holes inside the main hole. The earth was soft now, but the babies were no longer in danger. It was summer and warm, and there was no danger of the babies getting flooded. I noticed the dirt on the babies as though Dad was trying to cover them to protect them against the rain. I put some shoes and protective clothing on, and then braved attacks by Dad Cockatoo to put an umbrella over the hole. Somehow Dad realized that I was helping because he did not attack me. A few hours later, Ellie came into the house saying that one of the babies was missing. We both ran out, and yes, we could not see the second baby. I started digging, a foot stuck out of the mud. He was totally buried. He was still alive, but mud filled his beak. We used toothpicks to clear his mouth, but sadly he died from asphyxiation. The remaining baby coped well and was okay. We closed up the smaller holes and put down bamboo placemates and a tea towel on top of that to stop Dad from digging more holes. Sometimes we dads try too hard, and in spite of our best efforts, we just get it wrong. I hope one day our kids will not judge us too harshly. He grew stronger by the day, fully feathered now. You could even see the first yellow feathers on his head. Dad protected him really well, and Mom fed him regularly. He looked like he would be ready for flying lessons soon. In the meantime, Dad dug a new and bigger hole. Were they planning on extending the family? Baby grew up and probably preferred to be called a teenager now. He looked as big as his mom and dad, so with sometimes 20 birds in the backyard, how did we tell which ones are our family? Well, with Mom it was easy. She was the one with one wing and the one that was always around. Well, sometimes we could not find her, but we just had to go from tree to tree until we spotted her or just listened for her call. By now, Dad and Baby were not always around because they could both fly off, but they spent most of the day here with Mum, if not all day. One thing was guaranteed. Every night at sunset, Mum and Dad sat together and lovingly groomed each other before retiring for the night. Dad was a digger. Nah, he was not trying to mine or uproot the tree. Maybe he had plans for expanding the family. Dad was far less aggressive now that Baby had grown up. He regularly flew to the house and took food from Ellie's hand. He liked dog biscuits best, which was a balanced diet, but I was scared that he might just start barking. That's Baby. You could describe him as a true omnivore. He ate the parrot food we put down as a wild bird mix from the supermarket, but that did not stop him from getting Mum to feed him as big as he was. He also ate what naturally grew in the trees and palms around here. We had a macadamia nut tree, and the nuts were tough to crack, but the cockies did it effortlessly. They also enjoy the palm tree seeds. I gave Baby a peach, and though he was not game enough to take it from my hand, he feasted on it. But again, the question, how did we distinguish him from the others? Easy. He might have learned how to fly, but landing was another story altogether. He did not master the art of folding in his wings in time for the landing in the trees, so he ended up with his wings spread out all over the twigs. It took him a while to collect his wings together after landing. Dad and Junior were flying all over the place, leaving Mother behind. She climbed to the highest tree in our garden to look out for them, quite frustrated that she couldn't join them. Most of the time, they were not far off. She did not have a mobile phone, so she just screeched with an almighty sound, and they came home. That's pretty much like what my mother did. Sometimes Mum just couldn't stand the frustration of being left behind anymore. She would jump the fence into a 52-acre park behind our house following her family. Now, how did she get over the fence if she couldn't fly? She climbed a tree next to the 6-foot fence and then literally dropped down, resulting in what must have been a painful landing, a price she was willing to pay for freedom. She quickly ran to a clump of trees and then used her strong beak and claws to climb a tree where she would be joined by Dad and Junior. As long as she stayed up in the tree, she was safe. On the ground, she was vulnerable, and that worried us. It is a quiet park, but people walk their dogs there, so we hoped that she got high real quickly. At sunset, the whole family was back in the yard. Now, how did she get back? The small gap under the fence was big enough for her. Mum and Dad were getting ready for bed for the night. Notice how they fluffed out their feathers to cover their feet, almost like putting a blanket over their feet to stay nice and warm while sleeping. The family was still together. Just because baby could now fly around and looked as big as his dad did not take away from the fact that he was not even 6 months old, and they easily live up to 50 years. So even in human years, he was still a baby. He squealed like one too, mostly when he wanted his parents to feed him. He then got a mouth-to-mouth food transfer, while mom and dad shook like mad to get the food down his throat. Hey, come on, have a guess. Which bird is which in this photo? To help you, a few tips. Mothers are always the center of the universe. Kids always think that they are right. So by default, the one on the left had to be dad. It was winter in this part of the world, and the nights were quite cold. Relatively speaking, we had nothing to complain about. It almost never got below 10 degrees Celsius, but it can be chilly if you sleep up in a tree. I took the flashlight and camera out looking for them and found them sound asleep in the usual spot. Notice all the bits of feathers all over the surrounding twigs. I'm glad I don't have to sleep in a tree at the winter night. Baby was not around very often now. He just popped in for a feed in the late afternoons. He joined the bigger flock. We were blessed with good rain and the lawn was growing well in spite of it being winter. I mowed the lawn and dumped several loads of grass clippings on a heap near the lily-pilly trees. They enjoyed that. They dug holes and tunnels into the heap and had several days of amusement from it. As I said before, our cockies were not tame. The protocol was that I was allowed to approach them and sit down on the lawn about 10 meters away from them. Mum never came to me, but Dad took his own good time to walk up to me for a bit of a scratch. Now that he did not have a family to protect, he was far less aggressive. He even allowed me to do a two-handed massage. I used one hand to lift up his wing and then massage the tiny muscles under his wing with the other hand. I was in awe at how such a tiny, fragile-looking creature with such fine structures can fly so well and survive the storms and predators. Keep in mind that they are mostly fluff. If you take away the feathers, there's not much bird left. They are such delicate creatures and yet so tough. He thoroughly enjoyed this and closed his eyes from pure pleasure. Seconds later he would strike, but my reflexes were still good enough to avoid his powerful beak. Well, most of the time in any case. After that I had a bit of a diplomatic conversation with him and we carried on with the rubbing. I guess he tried to tell me that even though he allowed me to give him a rub, he was still in control of the situation. Well, that was fine with me, boss. I am sad to say that our story did not have a happy ending. The mother died. My son found her under the macadamia tree with her mate in severe distress. He was in emotional pain, squawking loudly while walking around her like he was protecting her. We have no idea how she died. There were no visible injuries. I did not put that on the blog because Sunday school teachers told me the story showed how God looks after the little creatures and that you could live a full life despite a handicap. It might be better to tell the kids about her death. Life is fragile. Life is a delicate thing. Love those around you. Hate is a waste of emotion. Share the hope, joy, and love while we can. Celebrate life. Spread goodwill. Respect nature. We are part of it.